Good evening, everyone. This is Jon Lancelot, Real Progressives. Our election. And I just want to have a conversation with everyone tonight about Syria. Syria, North Korea, pretty much any country on the earth, right, where we have these conflicts and we're involved with them. The American people, we have to be prepared to have conversations about these issues. How is it that whenever there's something going on in the world that we end up being involved with it? Why is it when people are dying that for the longest time we do nothing until the very end? Right now, we're in a situation where we have to face the rest of the world and explain what's going on. And here at home, we have to really have a frank conversation on what we're doing as a society. I always try to tell people here in New Jersey whenever I'm campaigning, because I am campaigning for New Jersey governor as an independent, progressive. I don't believe either party or any party has the capacity to craft policy that is beneficial to the American people. And when we talk about political parties, we're talking about very, very rigid systems and ideology that is ingrained into the members of these parties. It doesn't matter whether you're a Libertarian Party, a Green Party, Democratic Party, Republican Party, Constitution Party, you name it. We're dealing with very rigid policy positions, very rigid economic positions. Most don't even have cogent defense policies or foreign policies. And as progressives, we have to really dig in to why these things are happening, not only to the rest of the world, but to us. We have been facing the issue of terrorism for a very long time. Even before September 11th, we were dealing with terrorism and war, famine. And we've been sort of insulated from it. We've been sort of protected from it. And it was an assumption that the two oceans that are at our sides, the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans, protected us from any of the conflicts that were going on abroad. And we were safe and we could just sit here and be prosperous. The reality is that that world doesn't exist anymore. One of the main reasons why that doesn't exist anymore, because we live in a society all over the world where we communicate instantly via the internet, devices that we hold in our hands, or the computers that we sit in front of for a good portion of the day. We're very lucky, but we're also very unlucky because we've been sort of lulled into a state of complacency about conflict, about foreign policy, about the people that we vote for that push these policies. Think about it like this. In 2008, when Barack Obama was running for president, did you really, really, in your heart of hearts, believe that he would continue the style of neoliberal style wars upon the world? Basically, injecting ourselves into conflicts that the media comes to us and they say, well, we're in it because, let's say, A, B, and C happened. Well, there's been conflicts that involved human death and destruction, and we did nothing about it. If you go back in history into the Clinton administration, when the massacre in Rwanda was happening, we didn't react to it. We didn't, send troops or missile strikes. We didn't do it. We sat there and watched it happen. And we have to realize that tragedies happen, and it's heartbreaking that children anywhere on this planet have to suffer because of bad policies, warlike thinking. We're in the 21st century. We're supposed to be able to move ahead as a human family and build a world that the next generation of human beings could live in. But right now we're going in a direction where that's basically not possible. Right now, we're in Syria. Right now, we're going to North Korea. And right now, China is also off the border of North Korea. And escalation is happening right now. What escalation is basically the possibility of war is even more possible. But proxy wars have been going on for a very long time. I mean, the most famous proxy war was Vietnam. And that was a very painful experience for a lot of the generations of Americans who lived through that, whether they were civilians or on the ground in Vietnam as military. And we suffered for it. And it just seems like our government just has not learned that proxy wars go on for a very long time. And these strikes, these Tomahawk strikes that we did in Syria, really puts us in a very precarious situation. When we're having conversations, or whether we are having them or not, last year's presidential election was a disaster. Both parties have disappointed the American people. Both parties have lied to the American people, because now we're dealing with a situation where we don't really have a lot of control. The Congress is supposed to work for us. The Senate is supposed to work for us. House of Representatives is supposed to work for us. That's the Congress. The president is supposed to work to protect the American people. The Supreme Court is there to protect the laws that protect the American people, that are supposed to protect the American people. It wasn't always that way. In some ways it's not. We're still working through our issues. But as we work through our issues here at home, we are developing more issues abroad. And that makes a situation when we talk about progressive things and we talk about the programs that we want, and we're trying to inform people about modern monetary theory and how it could revolutionize our world and our country, we have to deal with a system of government that believes that whenever there is a recession, we have to do some form of war. That is the way out of a recession. And that belief has pervaded our political thought in America for a very long time, to the point to where we just go to the polls and we flip that switch for that candidate, and that candidate goes to Washington or it goes to the State House, and our interests are not being met. The first order of government is to protect the people that sent them to power. Whenever we vote for a government, we vote for a government to make sure that they're representing us and formulating programs that ultimately benefits the future of our country. But if you look at what's going on right now, all our government, our whole government is on one side of idealism. I don't even want to call it like going across the aisle or anything like that, or bipartisanism. Those terms don't apply. Not today, at least. It does not apply. What we're dealing is with a rigid, deconstructionist, authoritarian ideology that has infested our political system with rigid austerity measures which threaten the population of our country. And if you want to talk about a really robust defense program, a really robust defense of the American people, defense of our education, defense of our healthcare system, making a healthcare for all, we can do that. Whenever anyone says that how do we pay for these domestic programs that everyone wants so badly? How are we going to pay for them? All you have to do is tell them Congress could do it. Congress is not meeting the needs of the American people. Both parties are failing the American people. It is evident. Do we need any more evidence? Do I need to cite any more sources? Do I need to dig through any more books and learn any more about the history of the United States, modern United States, the future of the United States? Do I have to do any more research? Do you have to do any more research to realize that both parties are basically dysfunctional? And the way that you understand that both parties are dysfunctional is you look at the way that they legislate, especially when it comes to fiscal policy. When it comes to fiscal policy, the Congress has the power to say, we are going to $500 billion, even less. We could build a healthcare for all. Whatever it takes to make sure that we're building new jobs, Green New Deal, so we could bring America into the future. Right now, we have one really, really strong regressive party, and the Democrats on the other side are very weak and servile. I just don't see any strength coming from the Democrats to take on the Republicans. I just don't see it. They never win midterm elections. They never really keep their promises. They'll promise the world. They'll promise, whatever progressive policy you're a champion of, they're going to promise it to you. And then when they get in, they say, well, be quiet. We have to deal with these, the extreme GOP. We have to go to the right to get anything done. And I know you wanted to have this robust healthcare system. I know you wanted to have a robust 50-state program on rebuilding the infrastructure of the United States. I know you wanted that. But we're dealing with reality here. The reality is that we have to go to the right to get anything done. I mean, it's getting comical at this point. And talk to your friends about it. Talk to your family members about it. Just say, why do you vote Democrat? Why do you vote Republican? I'm speaking to conservatives as well, and as progressives, I'm speaking to libertarians. The human brain, we take in so much information daily, and we're consistently changing our behavior and our modes of thought every single day. Because if we were doing the same thing over and over again, day by day, eventually you would have an accident. We would walk in front of a truck. We did everything the same all the time. At 8 o'clock in the morning, if you walk out the sidewalk, the garbage truck is going to be picking up garbage. If you walk a bit earlier, you might get struck by it. Something like that. You know how to not walk into danger. You have to change. It's built into our DNA. It's in the animal kingdom. We react to things, we change. Even viruses and bacteria does it. That's why antibiotics have to be rationed and not overused, because biology tells you that they will change and do even more damage. That's science. Well, this is the same thing. We have to change our mode of thought. We have to look at the evolution of our society. We have to realize that the progressive movements has been years and years of grinding against the brutal legacy of the United States. And we've gone very far. We can't go back. We can't. And you have to go to your progressive friends and say, look, why do you want to enter? Why would you even waste your time? Because individually, you might feel that it's right to deal with the Democrats, and they might have burned you in 2016, but you're going to go back anyway. Okay, fine. I'm not going to hate on you because of that, but I'm going to question your motivation. I'm going to question your strategy, because right now it doesn't seem to work. I mean, I know that there are progressive coalitions across the country that are leaving the Democratic Party, that really don't want anything to do with them, because every time we try to push some progressive policies, they block it. So now we have to change our strategy and our thinking. And one thing I see is a new progressive mode of thinking when it comes to economics. When I was proposing my platform for New Jersey, which the number one platform is clean water for New Jersey, because we have marshes that they're trying to build pipelines over. We have lead in our pipes all over the state, mostly in the cities like Atlantic City and Newark, and in other places as well. We have schools in our state that lead was discovered in water. And if you remember being in elementary school, when you were thirsty and you raised your hand to the teacher, you said, can I go for a drink of water? And where are you going to go? You're not going to go to the cafeteria and open a bottle of water. They might now, but you're going to go to the water fountain. Some water fountains are better than others, but you're going to go straight to that water fountain. And if you have lead in that water and that kid is in that school for 5 or 6 years and they're drinking that water and over again, and now the state's going to tell you that, oh, we just discovered lead, that's a crisis of leadership. There's no one watching. We're voting for people that don't pay attention. What is it going to take for progressives to realize that we have to form a coalition and tell the Democratic Party to go fly a kite? We don't need them. And I'm going to tell you why. For years, I've been involved in politics for a very long time. I've been a political activist. Went to American University, got immediately involved in politics. And I lived in the library. I interned on the Senate. I did what I could to learn more. And it was a great place to be. I got there in 2002, and I was doing a lot of study, a lot of activism, met a lot of great, passionate people. At the time, it was anti-war, during the Bush era. And there was a lot of us who were against the war policies that were going out. And that's what we did. That's what we're about. We're anti-war. We don't want people to get hurt. And in 2008, we had a financial crisis. Progressives were right on top of that. You're pointed our attention straight to Wall Street. Wall Street basically runs the Senate, runs the Congress. Let's just be real. Lobbyists run the people's house, the Congress. Let that sink in. You don't have any power. When you vote for Democrat or Republican, you're basically forfeiting your power. When you don't go to your town council, you're forfeiting your power. Who do you expect to take care of those issues that you care about paving your roads, making sure your children's water is clean when you take them to school every day? Who's going to look into that? I mean, do you think, I just don't know. I'm always in a state of shock. So I'm never surprised, but I have to remain calm about this because it's just a comedy of errors over and over and over again. In 2010, the Democrats had a chance to keep the House of Representatives. This is the midterm election that happened in 2010. There were progressives all over the country that were fighting to keep the Democrats in power in Congress. And we were ready. Just like we're here today, we're watching this show. We're here. We're trying to come up with solutions, which I'm about solutions. I'm not about doom and gloom. But we have to talk about the history of what we've been experiencing in order to come up with the solutions that we're looking for. Because no one's going to come and say, hey, you know what? I'm the person that's going to do it. That's what the politicians always do. They'll always come to you and say, I'm going to take care of these issues. And then the way that they take the questions from us is like, we're expecting them to solve all of our problems. So we start talking about everything. Oh, do you have any experience? Which there's a lot of experienced politicians. I've never been in an elected office. And I'm proud of that. I do have a load of political experience. For years, I've been involved in it. But don't let any politician come to you and say, oh, I'm going to solve your problems. I have the experience. I have the pieces of paper called degrees. I mean, all I really need is a BA. I read all the time. When I left school, I didn't stop reading. Well, I don't care how many pieces of paper that you have. How are you going to involve the American people in the process? And that's what our election is about. Our election is about politicians, people who want to run for office and have solutions and evolve the progressive movement into power where we can help the American people. But if you don't understand how the Congress works when it comes to economics, you're not going to be able to solve anything. If you don't understand foreign policy and how we could possibly change it to where we're not going towards a World War III, which everyone is afraid of right now, what are we going to do as a collective, as a people, to stop it? Because we live in a country where we can put the right people into place to work and represent us. And I guarantee you most of the American people do not want to be involved in foreign wars. But now we have a responsibility for our foreign neighbors and our brothers and sisters abroad, because we've been involved. So we can't just go away. You know, and I know when Bernie Sanders was running, I still support him. I question his strategy with the DNC. I think he needs to bail. I think he needs to get out of there. I think that if he came to us and he said, look, let's pull something together, let's pull together a coalition, that would work. But we can't bank on that. But I still respect Bernie Sanders. But when he was running, I didn't really sense a real substantial or substance in this foreign policy plans. Right now we have North Korea that we're dealing with. We've been dealing with North Korea. If you know the history of that peninsula, it's been a consistent thorn in the side of the international community. But we need to come together on that level as well. There's no way that we could solve these issues without understanding why things are going on the way they are here. When you talk about neoliberalism, when you hear about it, when you hear about developing countries dealing with the IMF and World Bank, they're not in a position to have any sort of sovereignty over their money. They're not in a position to change their society because they're stuck in the Bretton Woods. They're stuck in the Washington Consensus. And now they're trying to work that shock doctrine on us. I bet you that they really don't want Congress to have this power. They want to give it away to some World Bank somewhere. And then we really would be up you-know-what's creek. So we have to be careful. We have to be urgent. This is an urgent situation that we're in. Everything that we do, every time you go to the polls, every time, you are affecting somewhere else. You are affecting not only somewhere else in the United States, you're affecting somewhere abroad. I don't care how local your election is. You could be voting for dog catcher. It's going to affect something, right? It's going to affect your neighborhood. And if your neighborhood's happy, but there's some other thing going on with the state, you advocate for that. You go to your state legislature, you put your neighbor in the legislature. You put your friends that you know who are savvy and who have the desire to help people. You put them up there. You don't vote for the corporatists, Democrats, Republicans, because it's been done and my family has been voting for these people for 50 years. When our grandparents and parents were voting for these parties, that was a different time. I mean, that was coming out of World War II. We're talking about right now where the parties are very dysfunctional. So we have to figure out a way of coming together here. And I believe I have an answer. We cannot be afraid to support those who are running as independents and third parties, like Green Party, even the Libertarian Party. If you're a Libertarian, you're on the line. We're all in the same boat. We all want the same thing. We don't want to deal with a two-party system because we see its failures. We see its failures here and abroad. Look at Syria. We had a disaster for an election, and now we're reaping the consequences from it. And we have to be very careful. We cannot go on as if nothing is going on with our regular lives. We have to have these conversations with our family, our children, our friends, our workmates, people that you meet on the street. You can ask them. People are so afraid to ask about their politics. And it's silly. It's a silly little like taboo thing. People, we can't talk about this. We're going to upset somebody. Don't encourage weakness. We don't have the luxury to be weak. The two oceans are not going to protect us. Every decision we make is now affecting the rest of the world. That is not hard to figure out. The way that we're going to be able to do this is to come together. It doesn't matter what your ideology is. If you don't like the Democrats or Republicans, we can deal with you. We might see different ways of doing it. We might not even believe in the same path, but eventually we want to be able to be free in our own country. You want to have economic freedom. We want to be able to open our own enterprises. We want our children to have clean water. We want education to be tuition free, so more of us can go to college and become doctors and scientists, come up with the next, propulsion for space. I always tell my friends about propulsion. This is just a sidetrack, but I'm going to tell you about propulsion. We have been using the rocket since World War II. It was pioneered by Wernher von Braun, who ended up being basically our leader at NASA when it first came into being. But it was used by the Germans against the British. The V2 rocket. That same technology we're using today. It was first used as a weapon, and now it's used as a means, mostly, because we have ICBMs out there that have nuclear warheads out there. But rockets are mainly used to get out into space, for satellites mostly. Or if you have a robotic or manned mission, you're using rockets to get out of Earth's pull or staying within orbit. At some point, we have to come up with a new way of propulsion. And that person that could have come up with it, they might have gotten poisoned in Flint. They might have got poisoned in Atlantic City or Newark because our politicians are irresponsible. They might not be able to get into the college they needed to get into in order to come up with the theory or the know-how to get us further and farther out into space, or to build the best roads where we could drive electric cars or come up with a new mode of clean electricity, whatever imagination. I'm just thinking of all the innovative ways that we could advance the human species. But we destroy people. And I'm not saying we as people, because I know I'm not destroying anyone. But as a country, we're not doing ourselves any favor when our population is suffering. And then when we look at Syria and what's going on in foreign policy, it is not so far off. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, I'm an expert. I've been studying foreign policy for 20 years, 30 years. I know, you're just a voter. I'm going to tell you what it is. You say to them, buzz off. If you've been involved in it for the past 30 years, what on God's earth have you been doing? I mean, nothing is being done. It seems like everything is getting worse. Your experience, your expertise means nothing. We're dealing with people. Just ask people. Ask them about their experience. See how you could fix it. I don't care if you've never been to college. You have a solution. If you keep up with what's going on in current affairs, and there's a lot of information, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I believe as human beings, if you know how to get around the internet and get around the news, you can pretty much piece together what's going on. And you just talk to your family members about it. I want to believe, and I really do believe, that a majority of the American people want to have a solution to the issues that we have here in this country. First and foremost, because we live here. America is our home. But we have to vote smart. The Democratic Party is done. Going back is not going to solve it. And it's evident that it's not going to change. They're not going to change. I know Bernie Sanders, the reason why they've changed even an inch, because Bernie Sanders, as an independent, because he's not a Democrat, he's an independent like the rest of us. He went in there and he told them how it is. He said, this is basically what we need to do. And we followed him, and a good portion of the country followed him. But the DNC establishment didn't want it that way. They wanted to push their establishment candidate, and it failed. It failed. What are you running back to? I mean, I'm just waiting for Bernie to say, you know what, I'm done with this, because I don't have that sort of patience. Too many people are dying for us to quibble about whether we should follow the Democrats or Republicans. It's done. We have to do it ourselves. Basically, progressives, I feel, at least with my policies that I propose, are advanced to the point where we could come to the table with libertarians, we could come to the table with conservatives. We have to be mature enough to do that, but not in what you would call a bipartisan way. There's no bipartisanship. We're trying to awaken the American people, and whether it's with economics, whether we're saying MMT, and getting the ins and outs of it, and you don't even have to explain what MMT. The acronym is Modern Monetary Theory. People obviously would be overwhelmed even by that term, but it's very easy for the American people to realize that Congress has the power to alleviate the suffering in America. And so when we have these economic downturns that are manufactured, and you have manufactured consent from the media, they try to tell us that, austerity is good for you. It's the only system we have. We have to pinch pennies all the time. I know we had the New Deal back in the FDR era. We had the space program, and Eisenhower built the Intercontinental Highway. I know we did those huge projects under the gold standard. Under the gold standard. Now we're not under the gold standard, right? We are free to do bigger projects now. And there's not a peep from either party. Nothing. We have the Democratic Party here in New Jersey who are proposing a public bank. And I'm not against the idea of a public bank. I just want to be fully transparent about this. I'm not against public banks for New Jersey. But in New Jersey, we have very, very quaint and small community banks. They're very small. You'll see them in different towns. You'll see them like maybe across a few towns in the same area. And they work. The public, most of us, we use, PNC, we use, Bank of America, those big banks, commercial banks. But we have these really small commercial banks that you walk in and you might be your neighbor that you see working in that bank. And, the rates are very low and they're very friendly. You actually know the bankers that you're dealing with. And my campaign actually goes through one of these banks because I didn't want to be associated with pipelines or any of that stuff. I didn't want the campaign to be associated with that in North Dakota. And that's a whole other thing. But it's related. Yes, if you take your money out of a bank, albeit, that's great, take your money out. But when they position public banking in a situation, Democrat or Republican, question it. Because what are they going to do with the community banks? They're going to have to work with the community banks. What is the public bank for? They'll pitch it as, oh, well, it's for the poor. So the poor could, have the opportunity to bank and, gain equity, whatever the positions are, but they won't even explain that. They're just saying, hey, we're making a public bank. The consequences of that is that when you go to smaller communities and they're dealing with their smaller banks and they have their small businesses, which, a lot of communities depend upon. And now you have another bank that's going to have lower rates and, people might run for those banks and say, you know what, I want to deal with the public bank. What's going to happen to the smaller banks? Are they going to shut down? I'm not saying that they are, but these questions have to be answered. We don't want to get rid of our smaller banks. These are very small, quaint banks that we can use. Some people don't even know that they even exist because they're doing banking with Bank of America. And here we have a political party saying that, hey, you know what, in New Jersey saying we want to make a public bank. For what? That's not going to solve, that bank is not going to be able to print any money. That bank, what is that bank going to do? How is that going to solve our higher taxes? What is that going to do? So we have to question what both parties are trying to do, and we have to support those candidates we know will change things, will change the dialogue, will change the way that we live together, will bring us together and not use division tactics to win. Anyone that tells you that, clean water is not an issue in any campaign in America, they're deceiving you. You can't survive without water. Clean water. 75% of the human body is water. 80% of a child's body is water. I don't know how that's not an issue. I don't know what could, I drink water every day. I mean, you can't do anything without it. Even if you bathe, if you're bathing in it, it's going through your, it's on your body, it's going into your membranes, you're going to be affected by it. And now what I'm hearing in Flint, people are getting bacterial diseases from the water. So I don't know how that's not number one. It's number one on my plate. It should be number one for every progressive candidate around the country. A new economic plan should also be a part of every progressive candidate across the country, and not pushing neoliberalism and pushing this austerity when we need to rebuild our infrastructure so we can live here. This is our home. We have nowhere else to go. We have to take care of it. But don't expect the Democrat or Republican, when you go into that booth and you're pushing that button for them, and whether you vote for a senator or a member of Congress, you're sending them to Washington and they're voting against your cheaper prescriptions, and your parents or your family members have to deal with more expensive prescriptions because your members of Congress are voting against, because it's coming from Canada, even though it comes from the same company in America. Then question that. Don't say, oh, well, you know what, they had to vote for that because whatever, but I'm going to vote for Democrat anyway because they're better than Trump and the Republicans. That's never solved anything. I've heard that argument over again. I've heard it over and over. Oh, you know what, if we're going to try to change the Democrats from within. That's the way that we're going to win. No, it's not. It's not. And the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., what do you think they're lobbying for? You? Or, they're lobbying for your neighbors? For your state? No, they're lobbying for their special interests. So, we don't get the policies for our Green New Deal that we need. We have companies like Tesla and Faraday making electric cars, and they have no roads to ride on because there's potholes everywhere. And what's the point of having an electric car if you can't even find clean water to drink? And if you drink that dirty water, when you go to the hospital, you can't get the care because you don't have the insurance. You see how it builds on itself? What kind of world are they building? I don't understand what kind of world they're trying to build. So we really have to talk about these very tough issues. Another thing I wanted to touch up on is this tendency of Democratic Republicans. And I call them Democratic Republicans are the Republicans and the Democrats colluding behind the scenes saying we're going to keep each other in power. But I want to talk about the progressive Democrats. And I get it. You want to work from within. It might be a great strategy. But what they tend to do is say, well, as an independent, you might not win. And as a Green Party person, you might not win. They'll just go on. But as Democrats, they're a known party. Look, that's laziness. And I'm willing to tolerate that, but it's getting to the point where we can't keep going back. We have to build something else. We have to be brave. We have to have our profiles and courage to go forward with something that's new. I know that there are, different, factions, I'd call them, of the progressive movement with different ideas, different twists on things. Here at Real Progressives, we're very big on economics because we feel that this is the way forward for progressives. Marxist economics is very interesting. I'm very much into philosophy and I'm willing to philosophize about it, but that's just not the way the world works. We have a Congress that could relieve the pain of America, but both parties will not do it because it's not in their best interest. Because when you send your member of Congress to Washington, all they're going to care about is re-election. They're not going to care about you or anybody else in any part of the world. All they care about is their own power. So they're going to take the money because that's the culture. That's the culture. But we have to look at our progressive movement, which is very fractured right now. And I believe that we can get together and come up with a coalition. But we have to have those hard discussions on how we're going to get there and how we're going to bring this all together. We cannot stay this way and expect to do anything in 2018. 2018 is not going to work with the Democrats because they don't win. Let's just be frank. They're not going to win anything. If we go into that court we're not going to win anything. We have to pose a challenge in 2018 as progressive independents. We have to come to the table, have our own primary coalition, so we primary our own candidate. So if you're a Green Party, you're independent, you're part of any progressive organization, we set it on a, let's say, a national scale, or maybe we break it up into state by state. But when we're dealing with, let's say, Congress, we get together and we primary ourselves, and we find the one progressive that could run in that state election, that could run in that congressional election, and supported by everyone, including the Green Party. So we have to have a conversation and say with the Green Party, look, the Green Party is an organization in itself, but it does not encompass the whole progressive movement. The Green Party is just one portion of it. And that's respectable. I respect that. I respect the Green Party. But we need to have our own primary, our own People's Summit, which is going to happen here in the summer, but our own People's Primary, so we could, shrink it down. So instead of having in the general 10 progressives running against one another, we could just have one running against both parties, one that we vetted and one that we know will take on the establishment in the right and proper way, excluding the Democrats, because all they're going to try to do is divide. So this takes me back to foreign policy. What we do this year is going to affect next year. We could only hope that cooler heads prevail abroad, that cooler heads would prevail in the diplomatic agreements between the United States and China, that cooler heads would prevail in diplomatic relations when it comes to between Russia and the United States with Syria. And cooler heads will prevail, will keep this from escalating further into a full-blown conflict that is worldwide. Also, we need cooler heads to prevail between India and Pakistan. That's an issue that we have no control over. So how do we help that without sending in the military into every single thing? We place a lot of pressure on our military. There's a lot of brave Americans that go into being Marines, Air Force, and Army, and Coast Guard. These are great people. And I'm not one of those progressives that are going to say, war and it's all bad and this, war's bad. Military itself is not a bad thing. We have a lot of Americans who are in the military, but we have horrible civilian guidance when it comes to foreign policies. Our civilian authorities that we have been basically voting for, Democrat or Republican, has not been able to come up with a positive solution to our foreign policies and defense woes, and now is leading us further and further into international conflict. So as progressives, if we do not tackle that, we will not be able to solve all the other issues that we're supposed to solve and we're trying to solve. We have to tie it all together. And Syria is a very complex equation. It's not a one answer problem. And also with North Korea, it's not a one answer problem. But we have a presidential administration that's continuing the same policies of the last administration when it comes to defense or foreign policy, that if we just send a few missiles in there, a few drones, that should have a great effect as a deterrent. You know what? It might work. We could have an argument about that. Maybe I could change my thinking a little bit on it, but there's no way that you could tell me that, this sort of policy where we're basically missiling, places and not getting the results that they were looking for, and we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's insanity, right? How do we change the conversation as progressives? We have to stay on top of that. Don't expect the Democrats to tell you, oh, we know the foreign policy, don't worry about it. Now it's time for progressives, anywhere progressives, to really start thinking of strategy and how to fix not only the issues abroad, but the issues here. And the issues here is going to take an understanding on how the Congress works when it comes to our economy and what they could do for us, and realizing that both parties are failing us. to the point where people are basically dying because they don't have the right amount of health care. They're dying because they're being poisoned by water. And once we answer these fundamental issues, then we can move forward with a campaign to run candidates in every single district in America. It doesn't matter whether there's a red or blue district. As progressives, we should be able to go into both. There's no blue here. There's no act blue here. There's no blue voting here. We vote for America. We're looking out for America, and we're doing it the way we know how. And the way that we do it is that we have the conversations with our neighbors. We have the conversations with our family. We have the conversations with people that we care about, people that we just met, people who are scholars. We spread the word about MMT and what it goes into it. We spread the word about a new defense policy and how to get ourselves out of these foreign entanglements in a respectable way where we can help our brothers and sisters abroad and reverse the damage that has been done for the past 50 years. This is our job. We cannot kick this to anywhere. This is us. This government is our government. This America is our America. We were born here, and even our friends who were born in other countries and they came here for a better life, they're here with us. They're going to help us solve our issues as well. No one is going to get excluded. And we're going to do our best to make sure that our direction, our new direction as progressives, is going to be respected because the American people respect it. We don't need experts to give us any validation. We don't need any, anyone that's been in the trenches in Washington, D.C. to tell us that our plans are pie in the sky. There is no more pie in the sky. None. Because we have an economic plan that will work. And so the function of our election is to bring on candidates that understand the fundamental principles of our new direction. Gone are the days where we're going to say, you know what? I'm going to join the Democrats because I'm scared. Gone are the days where you're looking at your local council and saying, well, I don't have time for that. I got to go grocery store shopping and I have all these other things to do. Let somebody else take care of that. Gone are the days where you're going to watch TV and be a spectator in politics. Now is a new era for us. The moment is here for us to make the changes as an American people. And I challenge you, speak to somebody tomorrow. Speak to someone that you trust. Even if you know that they might not feel you at first. I let them know that our water needs to be, clean. That children are being poisoned in school. Let them know that both parties have failed us and the Congress is not doing what it can to help us here in America. They will listen. They will say, you know what, they are very aware of it. I haven't met too many people who are party hacks who are going to say, no, I'm going to vote for Republican anyway. You might encounter some. But they will agree with you that we need clean water because no one could take lead and survive. So now we have about 4 more minutes left, and I want to thank everyone. I know I didn't really answer anyone's questions, and I really appreciate the folks who watch this show every night, and I appreciate Real Progressives for bringing strength to the progressive movement by focusing on economics and focusing on the American people, focusing on saving people not only here but abroad. And we need to respect ourselves to know that we ourselves, one person, could make a change. And if you have children, teach them history. Don't whitewash it. Don't teach them something that's sort of nice. When I was a kid, I was taught about the horrors of war, the modern war. And kids understand, and that will stay with them, and they will work to make sure that doesn't happen again. I want to make sure that there's not another Holocaust on this planet. It pains me to even think that the Rwandans, were having massacred and we did nothing. Every time I think about that, I wasn't even old enough to do anything at that time. But we should be motivated to make sure that there's no more genocide, that kids could go to school to make a difference, tuition free. They can go out and do the things that they want to do. They're not stuck. We want to make sure that our parents could live out the rest of their lives happy, not get their Medicare and their prescription cut by the Democrats and Republicans who are only in it for power. We want to make sure that our friends or family are successful in their careers. And if they want to go out and make their own business, they can. And the way we do that is that we take Congress back and we bring people to the table and not these petty squabblings. And we build a coalition outside of the Democrats and Republicans, and we come out with real policies and not, just the fear-based politics that has been shoved in our faces over and over again. So I want to thank you for participating in this. And I really enjoy it. And I will be back next week with a guest, and I'm not sure who it is, but this was my first solo flight, and I hope I did well. And we will continue the conversation. You know how to reach me. And so I just want to let you know that this is Jon Lancelot from Real Progressives, the candidate for governor of New Jersey, signing off. Have a good night.